This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net. And this music interview today is brought to you by Impact PR. They are a wonderful organization. And because of them, I get to interview people like Eric Bolton. And Eric, I have to tell you, I waited till this morning to listen to one of your video releases out there. And I was mesmerized because I know there's a deeper story behind your writing and your performing. And hopefully we'll talk about that today. So, are you originally from Canada? Let's start there.
I am. Born and raised in Guelph, Ontario, and then moved when I was a teenager, moved 20 minutes away to Cambridge, Ontario. And I've done some traveling, but this has always been home here.
Mm-hmm. So I'm originally from the Detroit area, and I can't tell you how many people will say to me, "Are you from Canada?" And it's like, why? It's the way you pronounce your A's. And I don't hear it. I don't hear it.
Oh, it's so funny. Well, Detroit and Windsor, yeah. My sister was a paramedic in Windsor for years, and she was always shuttling young Detroit drinkers back across the border because you could drink at a younger age in Ontario, so she'd have to get them home.
Yes, I remember my younger days doing that as well. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about you and your music. So, how did you get started? Because, there's either the individual who started singing in their crib, or there's the individual who just woke up one day as a young adult and said, "Hey, this is what I want to do." So what was it for you?
Wow. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I appreciate
Sure.
this. Yeah, for me, I always grew up having music around and involved in music, learning music. But I think it was really teen years of starting to become a lot more introspective, and something about music was this great escape in some ways, but it wasn't really about escape. It was more like a curiosity, something to dive into. And yeah, and it just, so it was more of a teenage thing for me. And then that very quickly turned into something that I knew I wanted to devote my whole life to. So, and it's grown since then. Now I see so much more reason to be doing music.
And we sort of touched on this before we went live today, and that is the industry is extremely challenging today.
Mm-hmm.
And, I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and, we had American Bandstand, we had radio stations that played the newest and the latest. And it was an exciting time. And if I wanted the music, I would go to the local record store, and I could buy this thing that's called an LP, and I could come home and play it on my record player as long as I didn't scratch it with the needle. But today it is so different because number one, most of us get our music online. Mm-hmm. And it's not the same for you as a songwriter, as a producer, as an artist, to be able to capture the monetary value of your music. And I know that's got to be difficult. So tell me, what is your role in your music? Are you writing, performing, producing, publicizing?
Yeah, it's definitely, for me, it's wearing all the hats sort of situation. I have a wonderful friend who is also a very talented audio engineer, and we've worked together so much now. He has now stepped into, we easily co-produce. Like I mean, I'm financially doing it, but he cuts me breaks all the time too. But just like the creative process of bringing these recordings to life, bringing this music to life has become a great team effort. But so I'm usually the one doing the writing and, applying for grants or doing as many shows as I can to then pay off the next part of the project. And then, and I am grateful that just it seems every year there's more and more people who surround the projects and are part of it. And I think to what we were saying there, yeah, the creativity in the music industry, it's hard because it's so diluted. It's so easy to be just another artist who might get playlisting, might not, and it doesn't really show the work that you've done. It just shows, if you're buzzing, if you're catching that way. Yep. So to me, I'm such a relationships based person. So I've found, it is challenging from a creative standpoint to try and to get places where you can really build relationships with listeners and get like repeat stuff. So I've seen that in my local community. I have a great local community who for years we've gotten to know each other and they've supported me and it's wonderful. So now it's just the creative process. Okay, how do you build that on like a national scale or across North America or across the pond? And how do you do that when you can't be every day right in the community there? So it's an interesting world we're living in for sure.
Well, and I love the fact that there are young musicians like yourself who keep recreating over and over again. And a lot of times you don't know how many people are really listening because it's very difficult to keep those stats. I even know for podcasting, because we are on so many different platforms, I have to keep going out and looking at all the different platforms to see how many hits this got and how many hits that got. And it's like, to me now, it's not worth it because I wait for people to write in and say, hey, I saw that podcast. I heard that podcast. And I'm sure that's part of what you're hearing when you're going out and playing, locally or now touring the wide range of Canada. And for our listeners who don't understand, I know when I lived in Detroit, to me, Canada was Windsor. Okay. I didn't know anything else about Canada. When I lived in Minnesota, okay, I had friends who lived in Winnipeg. So Canada to me was Winnipeg. So I had, but it's huge. Yeah. And there's a lot of, I should say, undeveloped territory from one end to another.
Yeah.
So you just told me that you're going to be going to Nova Scotia, which is supposed to be the most beautiful part of Canada.
It's
how do you make those connections from Ontario to all these different parts of Canada to say, hey, this is who I am and I want to come perform in your town?
Well, I would say I've been trying to take advantage of the cheapest domestic flights possible. So every time, domestic airline posts their savings days, I'm on it and I'm like, okay, where could I go? And I'll often book the flights before booking the shows, just saying, okay, that's a cheap flight. I could justify that by getting one show. Like if I can make a show work around that, and then you just start messaging venues. And each time I've gone to a venue though, they say, let us know when you're coming back to town, and you build. So the first bit of it is that initial, like, hey, how do I just get a face-to-face with someone or a phone call with someone? And most venues don't even reply, but then the odd one will. And then you go there and then they say, great, let's have you here again next time. So you already then on your next trip have one thing solidified. And it's been really, really cool because the days of getting in a van and going across the country, because Canada is massive,
right?
The days of doing that, it's just not really realistic anymore, unless you're making a killing and doing huge shows where you're bringing a band and a whole tech team. It's just not financially worth it. Just for me to drive out of Ontario, I could sooner fly across the country and on way less money fly across the country. So it's been really cool. And I will say as well, I have a great local community here that I've spent a lot of years in. So when I post, hey, I'm going to Newfoundland, I'm going to do some shows in Newfoundland, anyone here, it seems like so many people here will say, hey, friends and family in Newfoundland, Eric's
Go
coming to
hit.
town. You got to go. And so far, I'm seeing that happen most places, that you'll travel way far away, but someone from here in my local community has told their friends and family out there. Like you said, when you were in Minnesota, you knew Winnipeg. When you were in Detroit, you knew Windsor. So it's like you get those little degrees of separation
Right.
that end up making for these really beautiful nights. And yeah, so it's kind of neat. And then but it still is like the slow build of that time.
So as I was listening to your newest music video, at first I thought I was watching a commercial at the beginning. I have to tell you that. And then when I realized it wasn't, that was really part of the video. I had to go back and listen again. But it was very emotional. So my question to you is, where does your music come from? Is it something you've experienced, something that you've witnessed, or just something that you sort of have heard about and you're interpreting it?
It's a great question. There's so much that I hope is interpreted by other people with their own stories. And I think so much about art and music should do that. It should really just ignite life in general. So you have so for me in my writing, I have the hope that other people are attaching their stories, but it is for sure for me coming from a place of my own experience. And I've always really admired songwriters like, Bruce Springsteen and Bob Dylan and Eddie Vedder, Gord Downey, who are storytellers in their music, where they can step into the mind of someone else and write their story. John Prine was amazing for that. And to me, I'm still very much basing all of my writing on my own story. So for me, I grew up in a very loving, wonderful circle, but a very conservative Christian circle at the same time. And some of the thoughts were very limiting, I found. And for me, I knew from a young age that I was also part of the queer community. And it was tough. And I didn't really feel like I could talk about that. And then, so when I finally did start talking about it, it wasn't really met with a lot of support. And I went into quite a few years of feeling very isolated and very alone, and also trying to navigate that. And some of navigating that meant getting deep into a party scene. Some of navigating that meant dealing with mental health and depression. And then there's the coming out of that, where you learn to start to have pride in yourself and stand for yourself. So a lot of the songs like I'm putting out an album 2 weeks from today, October 14th, and I'm pumped. But a lot of that album is cataloging like that's the span of time between starting to say, hey, something's not right, and then getting your feet and finding you're gaining strength in self and authenticity and identity. So it's a lot of it. I don't really come out and say, hey, this is my story specifically, but it's all these themes of needing to find your inner light, or needing to find your feet, or find a path and strength, and learning to just start to love the life you live. And so I'm hoping that can translate to other people's stories really easily. And in the music video, we took it from the standpoint of a young boy coming from a little bit more of an insular, tougher upbringing, and then learning to kind of start celebrating life and watching other people celebrate life. And it's really, really cool. And we don't really, in the video, ever get into my personal story.
Well, in watching it, I have to tell you, so when I first started watching it, and I wasn't sure what the beginning was, I had this feeling of sadness come over me, because it brought back a memory of somebody I know. And then when I listened to it again, it was like, I saw it a little differently, but I could, in the beginning, the pain was so intense for me that I knew I had to keep listening. And I
Mm,
love when artists like yourselves are putting out music like this for us to find our own identity and, and understand people around us because we're all going through something.
yeah.
And you know what? That something that we're all going through is the worst something in the world. And I see we have a puppy dog in the
Yeah, sorry, we have three big dogs here. Sorry, carry
I
on.
know that's okay. I love it. Um, you are the music is just so real. And
Mm,
that's what I hope our listeners are going to hear in this new release that you have coming out because uh, so many of us are afraid to talk, and I understand why.
mm,
Okay. Um, as you said, you were brought up in uh, a religious community, and your religious community has certain thoughts and traditions that go with it. And sometimes, they can't see the forest for the trees.
yeah.
But we're living in a world where life has really changed, and it's
Mm,
time that we start understanding and accepting. So
mm. I
with
love that.
with that, when you said, you really don't bring your true story into it, that's okay. You're still bringing in pieces of you, and
Mm,
I could feel that, especially in the beginning in the basement that you're sitting in.
yeah.
I have to tell you, I kept looking for creatures to be crawling around you. I don't know
Oh,
why.
it was quite the space. I was not too sure. Yeah. It was a really, really cool location, but holy, it's a pretty abandoned location. Yeah. There probably were creatures.
Yeah, well, I think it worked real well, but I was distracting myself looking like I don't want to see anything, but is it there? Um,
Yeah.
so you've been doing music for a while. Obviously, we are just coming out of the pandemic.
Mhm.
Um, what was it like for you over the last couple of years when it wasn't so easy to get out and play publicly?
Mm. It was it was really well, it was a little different for me than I'm sure a lot of our people would say. So I'm very, very grateful to be uh, a musician who keeps himself very busy with shows locally. Again, though, that it's been years of being involved in my community where I just am now grateful to be able to have a strong full-time career from it. So I was actually going into the first lockdown. I was definitely coming into it from a place of nearing burnout anyways. So when it was like, hey, actually just kidding, your next shows for the next few weeks, they're off. And I was like, at first, like, oh, that's a financial blow. And then, but I was like, but actually, wow, I really need a break. So the first lockdown, I actually found myself just like so into it. I know that's not a popular thing to say, but I was like very okay with it. And then we got into the first summer opening up again, and I was grateful to be given a lot of outdoor shows and opportunities to get it going. But then, of course, then you get into the next fall and it locks right down. And I found then on the second lockdown, and in Canada we had a few, when it got to the third lockdown, it started to be, oh, this is actually starting to get a little tough. And um, you know, I had great summers every year where people were keeping me busy, but there's the rest of the year where suddenly you're not playing shows anymore because indoor shows weren't allowed, and
Right.
it was really tough. So then it seems like almost more now looking back, I see the financial toll it took, and I see the mental health toll it took. But I was again very grateful to be an artist who had a dog again. I was very
The dog
grateful.
wants to perform.
He wants to be in the chat. I own a music studio, so I was actually very grateful take some of the downtime, the lockdown time, to step into the studio and record a bunch and write a bunch. So I actually, throughout COVID, put out 4 EPs of cover music that I just missed playing. I missed being in rooms with people playing them. So I actually called the EPs Rooms. And then I also wrote and recorded a massive 15-song album. So it was kind of like it allowed me to channel a lot more into creativity since I wasn't performing. There was still, again, mental health journeys and financial journeys, but I'm grateful that it did allow space for things that I wasn't necessarily making the time for before.
Well, and I've heard that from a lot of musicians, and especially those who typically were playing at least every weekend, 52 weeks out of the year. And for some of us, you know, we're your audience. So we expect you to be playing. We don't think about the toll it takes on you. And especially when you're still writing, producing, working with your engineer. I know how difficult that can be because you hear it one way. Hey, that's great. No, no, no. Let's do it another way. Um, and so it's not like you just stand in front of a microphone, have it recorded, and it's done.
And it's done.
So for
Yeah.
those of you listening, it is a process. My brother happens to be a music producer, and I've sat in his studio and I've heard him go over one line in a song over and over again, until both he and the performer think they've got it right. So kudos to you for wearing all those hats. But you have something new coming out in just a couple of weeks. So tell our listener what that is and how they'll be able to find it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you. So I have a very, very long awaited album called Here Between, coming out October 14th. And it's my first album as a solo artist. I do have a beautiful, super talented backing band who joined me on the album. We recorded it live off the floor, so all of us playing together. I'm such a live musician. I really, really value that like raw energy. So we did it live off the floor where we all played together until we got a good take, and we did it over and over again until it was like, okay, that was good. That was the one. And so very little editing on the album. A lot of it is as is. I did then go and do other parts because I couldn't play it all at once myself. So, but yeah, it was really, really a lovely time. I started recording it just about a year ago, and I was going to just do an EP. I was going to do 4 or 5 songs, and then one song started to get a lot of radio play in the UK, and actually landed. I won a track of the week with Classic Rock Magazine, and it beat out like a song by Robert Plant and Buck Cherry. And I was like, what? How did my song do that? And it was like insane. But I think it was because we had a lot of my community voting, whereas I don't think they even knew the competition was happening. They've got other things going on. And so I miraculously won this competition with Classic Rock Magazine. So they did a printed feature, and again, UK radio play was happening. And so the team the PR team I started working with in the UK said, hey, actually EPs are not super popular in the UK. You kind of want to go singles or full albums. And I was like, well, I was just recording an EP. And then they were like, it's got to be an album, man. And so it was like, okay, just kidding. And so suddenly had to write a bunch more music and really get a lot out there and record more. So it went from a 4 or 5 song EP to a 15-song album. And so the process was extended, and now it's been the long process of starting to market it and get other people on board for it. And now October 15th, it's coming out, and I'm so pumped. And I have album release shows planned, and the first one is a 200-person theater, and it sold out in a week. And
Oh,
so
how wonderful.
really, I'm pumped. I'm feeling very encouraged, very motivated, and ready to take this album on the road.
Well, and to our listeners, you have to understand that going to live music is the best. And, small venues for me, I mean, 200 person venue, that's perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
I know that would be great if you played in a big arena, but you know what? I don't like big arenas because it's all sound, but
Yeah.
in a smaller room, you get to know the performer. You
Mm.
feel your vibrations. And I think it's wonderful that you're on the road. You're going to have this new album, not just an EP, available. So, to our listeners, if you like Eric's music, don't listen to it for free. You have to pay for your subscription, um, because he's only gonna get pennies on it anyways. But follow him. So how do we follow you so we can get your concert live?
Oh, thank you. Well, my website is ericbolton.ca, and I actually have a whole bunch of new features being added to the website in the next week. And I have a beautiful calendar of events there, really easy to navigate, that shows wherever I'll be. And there's all the links there for Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, or to just be more social on like Instagram or Facebook and things like that. I'm definitely most active on Instagram, and I am excited to just keep growing that as well. But ericbolton.ca kind of is the spot that has everything you need.
Everything. And
Yeah.
that will be in our show notes. So nobody has an excuse not to follow you. And October 15th is like 2 weeks away. I cannot believe it's the end of September already.
I know.
I had just mentioned to somebody that I was booking into next year, and they said, that's 6 months from now. And I said, no, it's 3 months from now. So welcome to the real world, everybody. This year has really flown by.
I know.
But obviously it's been a good year for you, Eric. We're really excited about that.
Thank you. I'm pumped to see what we can do. It's
Well,
it's the album's now here, and so really it feels like this is the beginning for it.
and the name of the album is?
Here Between.
Well, I want everybody to follow Eric, listen to his music. If you would have told me 10 years ago that I would have the interest in this huge range of music, I would have told you you're absolutely wrong. My love was old rock and roll and jazz. I've learned to like a lot of music, and yours is terrific. So, best of luck, Eric. We'll keep in touch, and come on back and visit us again. Okay.
I would love to. Thank you so much, Karen.
Thank you. Bye bye now.
Bye.